What if the reason you crave solitude has nothing to do with your personality and everything to do with your neural architecture? High intelligence isn't just about thinking faster. It's about recognizing patterns that others miss. But there's a catch. Those patterns only emerge when the external noise stops. Today, we're decoding the silent advantage and how silence functions as the ultimate fuel for higher order cognition. You were taught that being social is a sign of health, that constant interaction is proof of a fulfilling life, and that silence is something to escape. Yet something inside you has always resisted that narrative. There is a subtle exhaustion that builds after too much conversation, too much scrolling, too much exposure to other people's thoughts. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is a quiet erosion of clarity. Modern life floods your mind with inputs that were never meant to exist at this scale. Notifications, opinions, expectations, endless streams of fragmented information. The brain, especially a highly analytical one, does not simply ignore this. It processes it. It attempts to organize it. It tries to extract meaning from chaos. And that is where the problem begins. High intelligence is not just about thinking faster. It is about recognizing patterns beneath the surface. It is about connecting distant ideas into coherent structures. That process requires space. It requires uninterrupted cognitive bandwidth. When that bandwidth is constantly occupied by external noise, something critical is lost. You may notice it as mental fatigue or as a strange inability to focus deeply. Sometimes it appears as a lack of motivation, even when you know you are capable of more. These are not random failures. They are signals. Your mind is trying to tell you that it is overwhelmed. The world rewards visibility, constant engagement, and rapid responses. But the architecture of a high-performance mind operates differently. It does not thrive in noise. It refines itself in silence. There is a reason why some of the most innovative ideas emerge in isolation. It is not because those individuals rejected the world. It is because they needed distance from it to see it clearly. When you step away from constant interaction, something unusual begins to happen. The noise starts to fade. The scattered thoughts begin to organize themselves. Patterns that were previously invisible start to emerge. This is not withdrawal. This is calibration. Solitude is not emptiness. It is a return to signal over noise. And for a mind designed to detect complexity, that difference changes everything. There is something deeply misunderstood about loneliness and solitude. They are often treated as the same thing, yet they operate on completely different levels of human experience. One drains you, the other restores you. One is a lack. The other is a strategic environment. The confusion between these two states has created a powerful illusion. You may have been told that if you prefer being alone, something is wrong, that you are missing out, that you are somehow less connected to life. But what if the opposite is true? What if your desire for solitude is not a weakness, but an advanced adaptation? Consider this carefully. When you are constantly surrounded by people, your brain is forced to process social signals. Tone, expression, body language, expectations. This consumes an enormous amount of cognitive energy. Even when interactions seem casual, your mind is actively interpreting layers of meaning. Now imagine removing that layer. What remains is not emptiness. What remains is raw processing power. This is where something unexpected begins to unfold. Without the constant demand to react, your brain shifts into a different mode, a deeper mode. A mode associated with insight, creativity, and long-range thinking. This is often referred to as the default mode network, a system that activates when external demands decrease. But here's the part that changes everything. Most people never access this state consistently. Their attention is fragmented before depth can emerge. Their thoughts are interrupted before patterns can fully form. And then they wonder why clarity feels out of reach. So the question is no longer whether solitude is beneficial. The real question is why it feels uncomfortable at first. Why does silence feel heavy before it becomes powerful? Why does stepping away from noise initially create tension instead of relief? The answer lies in something most people never examine. Your mind has been conditioned to depend on noise, and breaking that dependency reveals something you were never meant to ignore. To understand why solitude is essential for intelligent minds, you have to move beyond cultural narratives and look directly at how cognition actually functions. The brain is not designed for endless input. It is designed for cycles. Input, processing, integration, output. When this cycle is disrupted, performance declines, even if activity increases. This is the hidden contradiction of modern life. You are more stimulated than ever before, yet less clear than you could be. For highly intelligent individuals, this imbalance is even more pronounced. The reason is simple. A more complex mind does not filter less. It filters more deeply. It analyzes more layers. It searches for meaning where others might not even look. That depth comes at a cost. Every piece of information is not just received, it is examined, compared, integrated into existing frameworks. When the inflow becomes excessive, the system begins to overload. This is where solitude becomes non-negotiable. Not as an escape, but as a reset. In silence, the brain begins to reorganize itself. Neural pathways that were fragmented by constant interruption start to reconnect. Ideas that seemed unrelated begin to align. The mind moves from reactive mode into generative mode. This shift is subtle, but its effects are profound. Instead of responding to the world, you begin to interpret it. Instead of absorbing noise, you begin to extract meaning. And this is where higher order pattern recognition emerges. Pattern recognition is the foundation of intelligence. It is the ability to see connections across time, across systems, across seemingly unrelated domains. It is what allows someone to anticipate outcomes, to innovate, to create frameworks that others cannot yet perceive. But this ability cannot function in chaos. It requires coherence. Silence creates that coherence. When external inputs decrease, internal signals become stronger. Thoughts are no longer competing for attention. They evolve, they expand, they refine themselves. This is why solitude often leads to breakthroughs. Not because isolation creates intelligence, but because it allows intelligence to operate without interference. There is also a deeper layer to this. Silence does not only enhance cognition, it reveals identity. When you are constantly surrounded by others, your sense of self becomes influenced by external expectations. You adjust, you adapt, you respond. Over time, this creates a subtle distortion. You begin to think in ways that are not entirely your own. Solitude removes that distortion. Without external pressure, your thoughts begin to align with your internal structure. You start to recognize which ideas are truly yours and which were absorbed without question. This process can feel unsettling, because clarity often reveals misalignment. But it is also liberating, because once you see clearly, you cannot return to unconscious patterns. This is why many intelligent individuals gravitate toward solitude, even if they cannot fully explain it. Their system is seeking optimization. Their mind is trying to access a level of processing that is not available in constant interaction. And when they finally allow themselves that space, something shifts. Decisions become sharper, focus becomes deeper, insight becomes more frequent. This is not coincidence, it is alignment. Silence is not the absence of activity, it is the refinement of it. It is where complexity becomes understandable. It is where scattered information becomes structured knowledge. It is where intelligence transforms into wisdom. And once you experience that state, the idea of constant noise no longer feels normal. It feels limiting, because you realize something most people never fully grasp. The mind does not reach its highest potential in connection. It reaches it in clarity. And clarity begins where noise ends. You have felt this before, even if you never had the words to describe it. Moments when you stepped away from everything. No notifications, no conversations, no expectations. At first, there was discomfort, a strange restlessness as if something was missing. But then, slowly, something changed. Your thoughts became clearer, not louder, but more precise. Ideas that once felt scattered began to align. You could focus without forcing it. You could think without resistance. And in those moments, you felt something rare. Relief. Not because you escaped the world, but because you finally experienced your mind without interference. Yet each time you returned to constant interaction, that clarity faded. The noise came back, the fragmentation returned, and you were left wondering why you could not sustain that state. So you tried to adapt. You pushed yourself to be more social, more engaged, more available. You told yourself, this is what normal looks like. This is what success requires. But deep down, something never fully agreed. Because your mind operates differently. It does not thrive on constant input. It thrives on depth. And depth requires space. This is not a flaw. This is design. The exhaustion you feel is not weakness, it is feedback. The need for solitude is not avoidance, it is alignment. Once you understand this, something shifts inside you. You stop forcing yourself into environments that drain you. You stop measuring your worth based on how connected you appear. And you start protecting the one thing that truly matters, your clarity. Because without it, everything else becomes noise. And with it, everything becomes possible. There is a decision waiting for you, and it is quieter than you expect. It does not demand dramatic change. It does not require isolation from the world. It asks for something more precise. Intentional solitude, a deliberate reduction of noise, not forever, but consistently. Start small. Create space where your mind is not reacting, not consuming, not adjusting to others. Let your thoughts surface without interruption. At first, it may feel unfamiliar. That is not a sign to stop. That is a sign that something real is beginning. Stay there. Observe what happens when your attention is no longer fragmented. Notice how your thinking changes. Notice how your perception sharpens. This is not about escaping reality. This is about seeing it clearly. Because the moment you reclaim your internal signal, the external world loses its ability to overwhelm you. And in that clarity, you begin to operate differently. Not louder, not faster, but deeper. And depth is where true power lives. Silence was never empty. It only felt that way because you were taught to fear what it reveals. Beneath the noise, your mind was always waiting. Not broken, not lost, just buried under layers of distraction. When the noise fades, something ancient returns. Clarity. Not as a sudden explosion, but as a steady unfolding. You begin to see patterns others miss. You begin to think beyond reaction. You begin to move with intention. This is not isolation. This is alignment. And once you understand this, solitude is no longer something to explain. It becomes something to protect. Because in silence, you do not lose the world. You finally understand it.